WRHU is underwritten in part by Christopher Cavallero and ARC Excess and Surplus, LLC. ARC Excess and Surplus is a wholesale insurance brokerage that offers professional liability products and services. Information about ARC is available at arcbrokers.com. That's arcbrokers.com.
The Donald and Barbara Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell supports programming on WRHU, Radio Hofstra University. Information about the Donald and Barbara Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell can be found at medicine.hofstra.edu.
Carmela's Pizzeria and Restaurant is proud to support WRHU Radio Hofstra University. Carmela's Pizzeria and Restaurant is located at 910 Hempstead Turnpike in Franklin Square, 4 miles west of Hofstra University. Carmela's Pizzeria and Restaurant menu includes pizza, pasta, and other Italian food specialties in addition to catering. Carmela's Pizzeria and Restaurant features on-site dining and delivers food. More information about Carmela's Pizzeria and Restaurant of Franklin Square can be found at 516-488-9898 and online at www.carmelasrestaurante.com.
The Lawrence Herbert School of Communication is a proud supporter of WRHU, Radio Hofstra University. Information about the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at hofstra.edu/Herbert.
Jim Metzger and the Whitmore Insurance Group Garden City underwrites programming on WRHU.
WRHU programming is underwritten in part by Shift Education of Technology. Located in Long Island City, New York, Shift Education of Technology offers training for careers in information technology within the software quality assurance profession. More information about Shift Education of Technology is available online at shiftedtech.com, or you can call at 718-713-1844.
Proudly broadcasting from the Richard Philip Cavallero Studio.
WRHU.
Hempstead.
You discovered.
A National Association of Broadcasters, multiple Marconi Award-winning station.
WRHU.
Radio Hofstra University.
Dust off your cleats and grab your mitt for the 4th season of WRHU's baseball show, The Batter's Box, as it will take the airwaves.
Swung on and driven to deep right. It is high. It is far. It is gone.
For the next hour, WRHU Sports will bring in-depth analysis you can't find anywhere else on the Yankees.
That is absolutely clobbered. Good gosh, where is that going to land? Oh my, what a bomb from Aaron Judge.
High fly ball, deep center. There it goes. See ya. A monster blast by Stanton.
Ripped to center field. This one's deep. Back goes Mullins, looking up. It's gone. Luke Voigt starts things off with a bang. A 3-run home run.
High fly ball, deep center. Allen back, still back, still back. See ya. A walk-off home run.
The Mets.
Got him looking. Side retired. Strikeout number 8 for Jacob deGrom.
Sox one out to center. Back goes Robles into the gap to the warning track at the wall. And it's out of here.
And Frazier drives it deep left field. Back near the wall. It's out of here. The Mets win the ball game.
A salute to the fans. And the captain is heading off for one final time.
And the rest of the MLB.
Here comes a 1-2 pitch. Red Sox win the World Series. 5-1 the final tonight. And the best team in baseball wins it all in 2018.
So get excited, baseball fans, because it's time to step into the Batter's Box.
Into this 2-hour special edition of the Batter's Box right here on 88.7 FM WRHU. Also streaming live on Facebook at WRHU Sports. And while you're on your phone, give us a follow on Twitter at BattersBox_WRHU. I'm Kyle Byrne. Alongside me is the always wonderful Tom Bauer. We have a jam-packed final show for us as we have a Game 7 of the World Series going on as we speak. But first, how are you, Tom? How you doing? This is it.
This is it. I am listen, I was typing up the final rundown over the weekend, and I've got to say, I was very, very upset that I just realized this is the final time we're going to be producing the batter's box.
It's pretty sad.
It was so incredibly sad. I mean, I don't know. I'm speechless right now.
It's incredible. We've had some run, Tom, from April all the way till now. Over the summer, the grind was going, and we're here. We're here. It's Game 7 of the World Series. It's finally here.
I mean, we're on the air longer than the Mets' regular season, so, I mean, we're just throwing shots straight off the beginning of the show.
No doubt about it. But, Tom, let's head off into our leading off segment of this show. We've got some big news coming on.
Yes, and we are going to start with the two new managers that were officially hired, and they are going to be Jace Tingler of the San Diego Padres, and then finally the big fish in the pond this offseason, Joe Girardi of the Philadelphia Phillies. Kyle, these two attractive franchises entered the market so quickly, and they also found their guys just as quickly as they entered the market.
They did. It was just as quick as they went on the market as they went off. I mean, I think the biggest one here is Girardi. Girardi had the big name. He went to the Phillies, a big market over there. He's got 988 wins. I mean, this guy, he's recognizable all throughout Major League. We saw him on MLB Network. He was great there. Hopefully, he can rearrange his ball club and help them make a postseason run.
Absolutely. And Girardi, the former manager, signed that 3-year contract. He's got a 4th-year team option currently to try and guide the Phillies back to the promised land. But at any rate, it's just going to be an immediate impact here in Philly. He made an immediate impact here in the Bronx when he was brought on. Of course, the Yankees stacked their lineup in the offseason that year, bringing in guys such as Mark Teixeira, CC Sabathia, and the tumultuous A.J. Burnett.
Yeah, but we can't forget about this Padres move. This is big because they had a big offseason last year, acquiring Manny Machado, the big free agent third baseman, and now they get the manager they need. Who knows what they could do next season?
Absolutely, and Jace Tingler is the guy's name, and you might not have heard the name before.
No,
but that's because it's his first time he'll be managing a big league ball club. He previously worked for the Texas Rangers since 2007, most recently as their Major League Player Development Field Coordinator. But
wow.
A.J. Preller made a statement, and he's a GM of the Padres, by the way, made a statement regarding Tingler and why he thought he was the perfect man for the job, saying his multifaceted skill set combined with his ability to develop talent and help players reach their potential at the major league level were key factors in the selection as their manager. And I think he's absolutely right when he touches on the player development aspect, considering just the vast amount of wealth they have, not only in their farm system, but on their big league roster right now as well.
This is a young team that we could see on the rise in the next couple years. This is why Machado went there. Mm-hmm. This is the grand scheme that these Padres had. This is why they gave him that big of a contract to go out there and play in San Diego. Mm-hmm. I mean, down the line, I could see this as a very dangerous ball club. Can't you, Tom?
Absolutely. With young guys such as Fernando Tatis Jr. and Chris Paddock. I mean, Tingler, he's such a great developer of people on and off the field. It was a great pick for the San Diego Padres to go with Tingler right now. But who do you think will be the better manager in the end of things? Will it be Tingler's first stint with the Padres, or do you think Girardi's going to have more of an impact with the Phillies?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I think Girardi he has the knowledge, and I think he'll turn that team around quicker. Just because he has the right stuff, and this is Tatis' first time as a manager, so I don't think he could do it that quick. How about you? I don't know. I mean, I don't think Tingler could do that.
Tingler's been a big league coach before. He spent over 10 years with the Texas Rangers organization, so he has big league experience coaching in the big leagues. But again, it's his first time managing.
Managing, that's different. We've seen this with Callaway. Callaway had struggles with this in New York. Yeah. Which we'll get into later. So don't worry about that, Mets fans. Don't worry, all right?
But ultimately, what's going to come down to, for Girardi at least, is whether or not his team can somehow get their pitching in the right direction, both in the rotation and in the bullpen. They had a team ERA that ranked 17th in the majors this year, and they also were within the top 10 of giving up the highest opponent batting average this year. So besides Aaron Nola and Hector Neris out of the bullpen, it's been a rocky road for the Phillies this year.
Yeah, this is going to be a long-term thing for them when they want to
This is a long-term, full rebuild. Not rebuild. I wouldn't say rebuild, but a long-term build for the future. We've seen it when you're building a championship roster. It doesn't take one move that happens over the offseason. It's multiple. It takes multiple times. It takes multiple seasons. That's what's going to happen with the Phillies.
Speaking of making big moves and people that are going to have to lead their franchises over the course of quite a few years, the Red Sox first accomplishment of this offseason was their hiring of Chaim Bloom as their new chief baseball officer, replacing Dave Dombrowski after a disappointing third-place finish in the American League East for the Sox. And Bloom is previously known for his work with the Tampa Bay Rays, but you got to like the direction that they're going. Seeing his work with the Rays.
Yeah, with the Rays speaks for itself there.
And just how good they were able to develop their young guys this year and really take a team of almost, you could say, nobodies and really make them into a viable playoff contender.
They took them to Game 5 against the Houston Astros, who are currently in Game 7 of the World Series right now. So you could definitely say this is someone who you would want in your ball club. You think he can bring the right pieces. He did that with Tampa. He was ridiculed last year for trading Chris Archer away to Pittsburgh, but it honestly looked like they got the better end of the deal in the long run with that one. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, picking up Austin Meadows, who is a solid Rookie of the Year candidate this year, and also Tyler Glasnow out of the rotation.
Out of nowhere, he comes out, and he is easily one of the top aces in this league for right now.
Absolutely, and he will be an ace to watch in the future. But now let's talk about the Red Sox just a little bit, because they've struggled immensely this season, or they're going to struggle immensely in the offseason. They might be getting rid of J.D. Martinez. That's up to him if he wants to take a huge paycheck or not.
Yeah.
But what happens if they also lose their heart and soul of the franchise in Mookie Betts?
Oh, if they lose Mookie, I don't know what they'll do. This is a totally different team. We don't know what's going to happen with them anymore. Like, that's their guy. Mookie is the heart and, like you said, the heart and soul of this team. If they lose Mookie, I don't see this team moving forward as a championship team. I'm sorry.
Well, there certainly will be rebuilding if they get rid of Mookie Betts. But, I mean, the bad thing about them is Dave Dombrowski traded their whole entire farm system away.
They literally have nothing to play for. There's no long-term, okay, we have a farm. Like, we saw this with the Yankees with Cashman, where he's like, we're not trading away our top assets right now for a short-term fix. Now, that's what the Red Sox did the opposite of, with having no farm system, and now all their players are leaving.
And it worked out in the Bronx. We'll be talking about them in depth about their season in just a little while. But now to shift focus away from Boston, and now we're going to head out west, where a familiar face in the New York media will be taking over as the pitching coach of the Los Angeles Angels under Joe Maddon's staff, and that is going to be Mickey Callaway.
The one and only Mickey Callaway. He comes over, he's a great pitching coach. What can I say? He was with the Indians, and with his time in 2017, they had the best ERA of that pitching staff. A 3.30 ERA in 2017, and including Corey Kluber, won the Cy Young twice under him as a pitching coach in 14 and 17. I mean, he's not bad. Just some guys aren't meant to be managers, and it's okay, and that's totally fine. He's meant to be a pitching coach, and that's what it is, and that's how life is going to be. And I think he'll do great out there in L.A.
Yeah, I thought he did somewhat of a decent job managing the Mets this past season. It was okay. It was a mixed bag of results because some of the starting pitching was a little bit disappointing. Syndergaard didn't have his stuff going on for him in the first half of the season, but then you also got to evaluate the bullpen, and well, maybe it was just the bullpen was just that bad, or maybe Mickey Callaway just didn't know how to manage a bullpen. Maybe that's why now he's the pitching coach instead of the manager.
Exactly. But like I'm saying, he's a pitching coach. That's what life is. This is how Mickey Callaway's going to go throughout life. He'll be a pitching coach. He'll do great. I think, and like I said, from 15 to 17, the Indians finished top 10 in ERAs with pitching. So he's going to be good. And they have a solid young core out there. Who knows what he could do with their young core of pitchers out in L.A. And Joe Maddon's a great manager.
Yeah, absolutely. The Angels seemingly, they have an offense. Maybe they'll get Shohei Ohtani back in the rotation soon enough. But I think it's ultimately going to depend on Joe Maddon's success and also Mickey Callaway's success, how much money the Angels are really going to want to spend in the offseason.
Yeah, that's going to be a big proponent. I mean, you still have the best player in the league, Michael Trout, out there in LA.
I just want to point out real quickly, he's a New Jersey boy.
He's a New Okay.
You can go.
We all know, Tom.
I just want to point that out real quickly.
You New Jerseys always like to take pride in that.
Absolutely. We take pride in everything, Kyle.
I can't argue that. You guys do have the best player in baseball, Michael Trout. He's one of a kind, and he needs to be in the postseason. And I think with Joe Madden and Mickey Callaway there as your pitching coach, they can get the defense, and now he can finally get the defense they need for Mike Trout.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, Mike Trout needs to get to the postseason. The Angels haven't reached they've only reached it once under Mike Trout's tenure there, and that was back in 2014 when they won 100 games, a really good year.
Yeah, they're the number one seed.
They were the number one seed going into the MLB playoffs, and then they collapsed.
They get swept by the Royals.
In the middle of the Royals' really good run, though, so you gotta give them that.
Yeah, we'll give them that. But still, you're the number one seed, and you lose to a wild card team. Not only do you lose, but you get swept. Swept, Tom. This is. I don't know.
Yeah, I wish that happened to Houston that year. That would have put a smile on my face.
We'll get over that. We'll talk about that later.
But anyway, as we're about to wrap up our leading off segment, let's just talk about one team that's kind of a dumpster fire at the moment, and that is the Pittsburgh Pirates. They continue to clean house. Their staff by firing their GM, but they've also hired a new president of baseball operations. But really, Kyle, I mean, this comes down to how long is it going to take for them to really even get back into contention?
It's going to be a while. I'm sorry, Pittsburgh fans, but it's going to be a while. It's going to take a long time, and it starts with the top up. It starts with ownership. It just shows you how bad and poorly run this team is. And you just hope soon enough you'll see this team in a postseason contention, because we saw those exciting times in this early decade in 2013 and 14 where they were making postseason appearances. This is a fun team, especially with McCutcheon. But now, I say it's at least 8 to 10 years.
Man, the good old days when they would chant where they would chant Cueto.
Yep, exactly.
When he's on the mound and then Russell Martin hits a home run to left field. That put a smile to my face. That was an ultimate legend moment.
It was.
By the fan base. But anyway, getting back to the Pittsburgh Pirates, it is going to take them a long time to get back into the postseason, but it's ultimately they're a small market team.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're going to have to develop from within.
Mm-hmm.
But
the farm system.
Yeah, and I know they just fired their GM, but what are you trying to accomplish when you trade for Chris Archer last year and pick up and trade away two of your best prospects, one a pitcher in Glasnow and then the other in Austin Meadows? We touched on them a little bit. And they've also fired Clint Hurdle, so we'll see what manager they're going to be going with. Right now, the names are a little bit murky as to who's going to take over the club, but only time will tell.
Yeah. Well, now we're done with our leading off segment. Let's go into the Fall Classic with all its dramatic it's brought so far. And now we're going to bring on our very own Tyler Martineau for our expert on the World Series.
All right, thanks, guys. So it's been a really exciting World Series so far. It's Game 7 right now as the Nationals went 1-2-3 in the top of the first, and now it's the Astros' turn to bat. But real quick, we're just going to recap through all of the games so far. Starting with Game 1, we talked a little bit about it last week, how that game went down with the Nationals picking up the first win, winning 5-4. I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on how that game has shaped the series so far.
It was a real tone setter.
Yeah.
It really set the tone of how this World Series is going to go. You know, Soto having his dramatics and doing crazy stuff during the field. I mean, and it shows, I don't know, it's just this weird thing like we talked about, how no team has won at home either, which is wild. So, I don't know. Game 1 was exciting, and it just kept on going throughout the rest.
Like, that's just absolutely ridiculous that even nobody can win at home.
Yeah,
like,
it's insane.
What are you doing? Like, you have the crowd to your advantage. You know the field so well. Why can't you win at home? Why has that become such a difficult task this postseason? I don't get it.
Yeah, and you really expect the Astros to at least win one home game this series.
Especially 4 of them.
The first 2 games of the series, Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, those are the ones that you expect to win.
Yeah.
They've been dominant all season, all postseason, and then the Nationals win those 2 games, and it's in Houston? Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
And Verlander was pitching last night, too, but we'll get into that in a little bit, yeah.
Right.
But moving on.
Yeah, so from there, we go into game 2, and the Nationals just kept it up,
going.
just destroyed the Astros.
They
in
kept
game
the
2.
foot on the throttle and just didn't let up in game 2 there, winning 12-3. That was absolute domination of the Nationals. It was insane.
I think the Nationals really found their edge in the postseason by not just having 1 or 2 guys carrying them, unlike a certain New York team that we're going to be talking about soon on the broadcast. But it's not just Anthony Rendon. It's not just Juan Soto, who is making himself possibly into a legend now. Just not in the postseason, but just as a name in baseball in general, having a fantastic year. But at any rate, you go down the entire batting order, and you can pick out 3 to 4 or just everybody's name and be like, hey, these guys actually contributed, and that's what's ultimately going to win you ball games.
And Tom, you kind of talked about that a certain New York team, and a familiar face really shined in that game as Drupal Cabrera. 3 RBI in that game to really lead the Nationals, like someone you really wouldn't expect, especially on this loaded Nationals offense.
No, not in the slightest.
No. Like, they've done a really good job of taking, like, middle-range guys like Howie Kendrick and really making them into really good ball players just this year. Howie Kendrick had an average over 300 on the regular season and probably could have, and I believe he took home NLCS MVP honors, too, if I'm not mistaken.
And, you know, I was looking at the stats in the first 2 games of the series. The Astros, 3 for 17 with runners in scoring position. That's a 176 average. The Nationals, 7 for 21 that's a 333 average with runners in scoring position. And you talk about it all postseason long. The teams that contribute with players and runners in scoring position that can get those runners home. Especially we saw it in the ALCS, how the Yankees really weren't able to do that in the latter part of the series, and that's what hurt them. And I really think that's what helped the Nationals in the first 2 games.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
All right, so let's move on now to Game 3, and the momentum just completely shifted the other way. You'd think 2-0, like we talked about, 2-0 for the Nationals. They go home, and then it just completely flips.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I remember Sam Yarnell putting in 2 weeks ago, and he was like, we knew the Nationals were making the World Series at that time, and he was like, listen, the Nationals are going to get swept in the World Series. What is going on? They are getting swept, and I'm going to accept that. They went into this game with a 2-0 lead. It's okay if you throw a game and make it 2-1, but, I mean, they just got absolutely shut down in Game 3. So they weren't doing themselves any favors there.
And, you know, you look at in Game 3, after Cole and Verlander lose it for you, it's Zach Greinke, the trade deadline pickup. And I think that just really shows why the Astros are in the World Series right now. They're one of the only teams that made a move during the trade deadline for a starting pitcher, and that's what got them there. Of course, he wasn't the star pitcher, like especially throughout this postseason, but when it mattered here in Game 3, and he also had a great game against the Yankees in the ALCS, when it's mattered so far, he's stepped up, and now he's pitching here in Game 7.
It just shows you how important the trade deadline is, which we covered right here on 88.7 FM WRHU, the Batters Box, which we had a fun time on that trade deadline show. But yeah, we were talking about it then, we're talking about now still, that Zach Greinke was probably the biggest offseason trade deadline acquisition, and we're still talking about it now. It just shows you how important he was.
He was just having such a dominant season in Arizona, just on his own, out in the desert and throwing great ball games. And then he gets traded from the desert into like the eastern coast of Texas into Houston. But it was just such a great pickup by them. You had a great regular season. We know he couldn't go certain places because of that no trade clause he had on probably half the teams in the league. So, I mean, if he was going to go to a big team, it was most certainly going to be the Astros, and that's what happened, and now every team is paying the price for it.
And, you know, one other point that I want to make about Game 3, we talked about in Game 1, Juan Soto really stepping up big. In Game 3, Soto and Anthony Rendon, 1 for 9 combined together there. Just kind of disappeared in that game, and once again, offense, you need it.
Yeah,
and
it's
it
key.
Just didn't happen.
It's key in these big games like this. As much as pitching is needed, so is offense.
So now we move on over to Game 4, and once again, the Houston Astros just continuing off their Game 3 momentum and getting that 8-1 win. That just really helped them there.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, just back-to-back winning games for the Astros is such a big momentum shifter. The Nats had the momentum even down 2-1 in the series. You would have at least expected them to win Game 4 of the series to at least stir the pot up a little bit. And once I saw Game 4 go down and I saw the Nats lose 2 in a row, I'm like, okay, this is it. The Nats are going to lose 4 straight games now. They're going to lose 4-2 in the series. Obviously, that's not the case because they're still playing tonight. At the end of the first inning, no one has scored yet.
So you just lost all hope for the Nationals at the.
It was gone. I'm in the same boat as Tom. I thought
it really looked like the Astros because you lose those first 2 games at home, and they really had to change something, and that's what they did in Game 3 and 4. And I agree with you guys. It really looked like they might be able to move on from that.
And then especially in Game 5 when Scherzer got scratched with the neck spasms, I was like,
Right.
uh-oh. Even if they push it to a Game 7, I was like, they're going to go up 3-2 going back to Houston. This is over. But we're still here talking about it.
Right, yeah, if they were able to get to the Game 6. Yeah, especially, but Strasburg, we'll talk about that later,
Exactly.
but Strasburg coming up big there.
But I think Max Scherzer not being able to throw in Game 5, it just took the heart away, I think, for the Nats, and it kind of just derailed their emotions just a little bit, and it probably factored into their mindset. But also, you got to take Alex Bregman, you got to give him credit.
Right.
Having kind of a very cold postseason, comes up big, hitting the grand slam in game number 5, that is. And that's ultimately, I mean, it didn't matter anyway because they won 2-1. The Nats only scored 3 runs in games 3, 4, and 5 at home, 1 in each game. So their offense just couldn't get going. And I'm still looking for answers as to why.
Yeah, and you just talked about it, Bregman. Like, I feel like that was really important. You talked about how he really wasn't showing up so far in the playoffs, but just a huge Game 4 for him.
Mm-hmm.
So now moving on to Game 5, it was pretty wild. You talked about how Max Scherzer was scratched from starting. Now, before we really go into the game, do you think Max Scherzer not being able to pitch that game, and now he's here in Game 7, do you think ultimately that really helped the Nationals that he's able to pitch in this game instead?
It was, but it was also a big risk, too.
It was.
Like, especially if they lost last night, then it would have been like, why didn't we play Scherzer in Game 6 there? We might have had a chance, getting a game there. But, I mean, now, luckily, they could say, well, at least we have Scherzer tonight, because if they played him in Game 5, there was no way he was going to play tonight.
See, the report said that, I mean, Scherzer could barely even, take off his shirt.
He was struggling.
Of Game 5, he was struggling very hard. Just, I mean, if you can't even take your shirt off, how are you? I don't even know how he's able to throw the baseball tonight, if he throws tonight, even.
And then you look at Garrett Cole on the other side from Game 1, really struggling, and then stepped up in Game 5. Back to the Garrett Cole that we've seen all season. 7 innings, 3 hits, only 1 run allowed, and 9 strikeouts. He was really instrumental in this win for the Astros.
Yeah, he was. He was, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
But we, you know how I mentioned the first 2 games, the Astros were terrible with runners in scoring position, and then after the next 3 games, it completely flipped. So I get the runners in scoring position stats for games 3 through 5. Nationals 1 for 21 with runners in scoring position. That's a 48 batting average.
That's not good.
It's .048. And then Astros 11 for 28. Completely flipping from their 147 average in the first 2 games to a 392. So that really helped them in the next 3 games. And then you go to Game 6, and there's just really a lot to talk about from Game 6. We have a lot that we can go on there, but just starting with the Nationals being able to just come back and force this into a Game 7.
So I think before we talk about the game a little bit more, I just want to talk about the one play that I think is still being talked about a lot by baseball fans today, and that is the incident involving Trey Turner hitting a dribbler down the third baseline, and then the Houston catcher goes up and fires it to first, and then Trey Turner, I think the ball hit him on the hip.
It hit him on the hip. It was the back of his right thigh, it looked like, that hit. And he was out of the base path when he was running. He was running foul territory. But then he comes back in. Yes, yeah. But then he comes back into the base path to get the run. run safely to first, and he gets there, but he gets hit, and because of the rule, he's out. It was a pretty wild scenario. It was a very unlucky. It was a bad ball that was thrown by not by Turner, by the third baseman of Houston. It was a bad ball thrown, no doubt. If that was a good ball that was thrown, we're not talking about this at all.
Well, I think also you got to consider the fact that Trey Turner also knocked off the glove of Gurriel at first base. So I guess if you're going to give the umpire sympathy on this call, you could say, well, he knocked the glove off. So, I mean, yeah, I guess that warrants an out. But no. I mean, come on. The dude stepped on the grass maybe once or twice during.
Yeah, it really doesn't even have anything to do with the first part. It's the end that matters when he had to touch the base, because he had to be where he was in order to touch the bag. You have to be in fair territory to touch the base. The base is in fair territory itself. So from there, like, I feel like Trey Turner didn't really do anything wrong in the end when he had to tag the base.
Yeah, I think this just brings up the discussion of robo-umps, which everybody's been talking about now since this happened. Now, obviously, robo-umps can't make the calls on the base paths, but they can make the calls behind the plate, and that's been an issue for both franchises in the series. I remember, I think it was Victor Robles at the plate, in which it was a 2-2 count, and then it's a fastball outside and high, which I thought could have gone either way, but the umpire called it a ball. Garrett Cole certainly didn't think so.
No.
And then the next pitch is a slider high and outside, further off the plate, and then it's called strike 3. I don't understand that, but this brings up the discussion again of robo-umps, and we've seen this firsthand in the Atlantic League this year.
With the Ducks.
Yeah, with the Long Island Ducks. And I remember me and Tyler, we were on the call in the postseason for the Ducks clinching into the Atlantic League Finals, and we were able to see just that the replay system there, it's good.
It's good, but it still causes drama. We saw it, how, like, it takes a couple seconds for the umpire to sometimes for it to be relayed down to him to make the call. And we saw some managers get upset about it, which kind of confuses us up in the booth, like, why are you arguing with a robo-ump at the end of the day? But it'll be interesting to see, does that eventually come to the MLB? Probably not anytime soon, though. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think I'm for it. I would like to see it. But going back to this whole Trey Turner thing, I do like what Kyle Schwarber tweeted out last night. He tweeted out a picture of the softball first base, you know, where they have half of it in and half of it out of bounds. And he tweeted out saying that we should make this a thing, and it's only the fair way. I mean, he kind of has a point there. It's not completely off. I mean, it does save the scenario. There would be no controversy if this happened, if we had the softball
the safety bag.
The safety bag here. I don't know. Is it just me here, or am I crazy?
I mean, I don't think you're entirely crazy about it. I like the idea, so that way we don't have to deal with this again. But then you also got to consider that maybe gives the first baseman an extra edge in catching the ball a little bit quicker. So
yeah,
I mean,
he's a little closer to the ball. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. The MLB has been experimenting with like new rules and implementations, especially in the Atlantic League. So it could be something they consider in due time. But unless Kyle Schwarber gets about 100,000 retweets on that, I don't think that we're going to hear Joe Torre or Rob Manfred be talking about that anymore.
Well, now that you're bringing up the safety bag, I got 2 points for this. One, if there's 2 bags, the first baseman would only be able to use the white bag, the one that's in fair territory, while the runner would have to. So I guess there's no really advantage for him, just less like contact or less of this happening. And the second thing, the only thing that I would see that could probably cause a problem is the way that hitters hit the ball so hard, and when you see the ball hit off the base, it's easier to tell that was in fair territory. If it's hitting off the orange bag, maybe you think it's fair if it's coming in hard, and you might think it was fair, but the orange base is going to be out of play, so that would actually be foul. Might cause some controversy there. But let's just get back into the game with Steven Strasburg coming up clutch in Game 6. 8 1/3 innings pitched, only 5 hits, 2 runs, and 7 strikeouts. And then Anthony Rendon coming up clutch in that game we talked about earlier when he really struggled in having 5 RBI in Game 6.
I think that was just the perfect incidence of a ball don't lie moment. Because that was like a few plays after the Trey Turner incident, and he just clobbers his home run over left field. It was a majestic shot.
It was a moon shot. It was beautiful.
Not as beautiful as Juan Soto's home run.
No, Soto's was gorgeous.
I mean, that one soared probably into one of the upper tiers in Houston's ballpark, Minute Maid Park.
Yeah. But going on Strasburg, he has 47 strikeouts in the 2019, tied for the most in a single postseason. This is how historic he's going. We all knew about Steven Strasburg. When I was younger, I always heard Steven Strasburg, he's so great, 2012 and stuff like that. And he never got to play into the postseason. But now we're finally seeing it. And this is exciting stuff. Seeing him dominate games like this is so cool. I'm so happy for it. Man, it's cool.
Yeah, Kyle, you're exactly right. With being able to see Strasburg in the playoffs, we actually get to see the real Steven Strasburg. He really hasn't had a chance to shine in this type of way, and now his team finally getting all the way to the World Series, and he's battled so many injuries and so many things throughout his career so far, and then to get to this point and just have a great game to push his team into Game 7, to have a chance to beat the Astros at their home field. It's really coming together here for him.
Storybook stuff. And then going off Juan Soto. It's a weird thing with me, but Juan Soto is younger than me. This is where it gets weird for me. He is born in October of 98. I was born in July of 98. I mean, this is just wild stuff where I have the people I'm watching and covering is younger than me. It's wild. I don't know. I mean, he's doing what he loves, and I'm doing what I love, being right here on 88.7 FM, WRHU, doing the batter's box. So, I mean, I'm so happy for him.
I mean, it's just...
We're both doing something we love right now.
I mean, we're all thriving, but Houston just hit a home run.
Oh, wow.
They hit a solo shot.
Yuli
Gurriel, his second home run of the postseason, and that's going to give Houston that 1-0 lead. But back
to my midlife crisis over here. No,
midlife crisis. I'm like 21. Come on.
Yeah, 21. But yeah, anyways, back to you, Tom.
Just doing what we love.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I mean,
that's what it's all about.
It's just weird that Juan Soto. I mean, he's still older than me, but only by maybe a
couple months.
Yeah, 9 months or
9 months or something. Yeah.
That's just weird. But
he has 5 home runs this postseason, breaking a tie with Miguel Cabrera in 2003 for the most home runs in the postseason by a player 21 or younger.
And he's
breaking records out here. He's 21.
He's making his name known just simply by his antics on the field, if you want to call them antics.
All right, yeah, the antics are
we could get into that a little bit. We're running out of time, what was going on with Soto doing the thing to just copy Alex Bregman?
Yeah, Bregman.
And then they both have differing beliefs about it at the end.
Bregman carried the bat, and he apologized for carrying the bat.
Yeah, he did.
He did. Soto did not.
Soto
stood to his beliefs and was like, "No, I carried it for a reason to go back at Bregman." And I mean, I kind of respect it. I mean, he's not sorry for it, and he just does what he wants. I don't know.
Why should he be sorry? He should have absolutely no regrets on the field right now. I mean, from the Soto shuffle in the beginning of the in the beginning of the postseason to him just, I mean, he's making his name for himself. He's earning his money later in the broadcast, and he's putting his records on baseball history, and he's just doing a great job of doing that. But at any rate, that will wrap up things for our discussion on the World Series. Thank you to Tyler Martineau for coming on to help us out. When we return, we will begin to dissect each New York team's season, starting with the boys in pinstripes. But first, a sports update with Ryan Ginio.
Thanks, guys. The Islanders are off tonight, but they will resume play on Friday as they host the Lightning at NYCB Live, home of the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. The Isles will look to continue their hot streak as they've won their last 7 in a row. Puck drops at 7 o'clock here on WRHU and the Islanders Radio Network. Elsewhere around the NHL, the Devils lead the Lightning 4-3 in the second period, while Edmonton has a 2-0 lead over the Blue Jackets, also in the second period. From the ice of the Diamond, Game 7 of the World Series is underway at Minute Maid Park. The Astros lead 1-0 in the bottom of the second inning thanks to a solo shot from Yuli Gurriel. This is the 4th winner-take-all Fall Classic to go to 7 games in the past 6 seasons. Washington are looking to win their first World Series in franchise history. Their ace Max Scherzer returns to the mound after missing out on Game 5 due to upper back spasms. Before the game, he shared how a cortisone shot has helped his preparation for tonight. sound courtesy of the Washington Nationals. Meanwhile, for Houston, they seek to win their second title in 3 years. Manager A.J. Hinton spoke before the game to share his thoughts on ending Game 7.
I don't know that there's a lot of explanation or any fancy quote that you got to give you guys or them.
Sound courtesy of the Houston Astros. Finally, over to the hardwood, the Knicks are in the Sunshine State as they battle the Magic. New York trails 53-63 in the third quarter. With your sports update, I'm Ryan Chinio. Now let's step back inside the batter's box with Tom Bauer and Kyle Byrne.
Hi, this is Anthony DiColo, Mets beat writer for MLB.com. You're listening to the Batter's Box on 88.7 FM WRHU.
Back inside the final edition of the Batter's Box here, right on 88.7 FM WRHU. I'm Kyle Byrne. Alongside me is Tom Bauer. We just wrapped up our World Series talk, but now we're going to talk about the boys in blue up there in the Bronx, as now we're going to bring on our very own Jesse Lindell.
Here come the Yankees. Let's get behind the cheerleader Yankees.
All right, thank you guys. How y'all doing?
Not too bad. I just realized this is their final time all three of us are on together.
It is.
As producers. On the
wow, this time's already come. It seems like just yesterday.
Just yesterday, Jesse.
Got the
Me and
email.
Tom were having our reminiscences before.
Yep.
And it was pretty wild. And now all three of us are on. It's really hitting me.
Yeah.
It's really hitting me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know it sounds
You're
weird,
at a loss for words,
it
Jesse.
seems like just yesterday that I was like jumping up and down. I got the email, was able to produce this show. So let's go out with a bang, shall we?
Let's do this. Let's talk about the New York Yankees right now.
Yep. So our the latest news for the New York Yankees is that Larry Rothschild, the pitching coach from 2011-2019, just got fired. Now, I was not a Larry Rothschild supporter, really, myself, but I want to hear what you guys think about this move and whether you think it was the right one or not.
Oh, it was absolutely the right move. The pitching staff has never changed. The pitchers have never really done that. The pitching staff has never done really that well under him. And I think it was just time for a change. And he's been there since 2011. He's been there since Girardi. You would think when the turnover went from Girardi to Boone, you'd think of something else, but no. I don't know.
Well, my reaction is this. High fives all around.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Let's do it.
We are high-fiving to a man losing his job.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, well, that's a little bit messed up. I'm happy to see him take
excited for a new change. Turning a new leaf.
We're turning a new leaf. And at any rate, Larry Rothschild, I mean, he had a long tenure. He was there since Joe Girardi took over as manager. He was the pitching coach, and he did really well in the beginning.
He did.
But ultimately, just things weren't shaping up the way anybody in the New York market would have really wanted it to go. I mean, just this season, we've had so many issues just with, just the bullpen alone, the starting rotation especially. I mean, that's something the Yankees are going to have to address in the offseason, but just because the pitching just didn't live up well, I mean, it's just time for Rothschild to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote down a list of times where he was potentially and most likely at fault for some of the pitching mess-ups that have happened with the Yankees basically throughout his whole entire tenure, not just this year. So let's all go back in time a little bit. So last year, and this was probably the one that irked me the most, was when Luis Severino was tipping pitches, and it took Rothschild 3 months to figure it out. And the only reason why he did was because you guys remember that 16-1 loss against Boston? And I think it was Mookie Betts and Jackie Bradley Jr. discussing in the dugout fastball. Like, they knew what pitch he was going to throw. It took them, 2 seconds to figure out what he was going to throw? Larry Rothschild in 3 months couldn't do it. And he couldn't fix his mechanics, couldn't look through the tape. That was one of the many grievances that I have listed as to how Larry Rothschild was at fault for the Yankees pitching staff not being that great.
And I think it's if they're gonna go in a new direction, they got to find somebody who's very analytically driven, because that's just the way the game of baseball is really starting to shape up in the recent years. I mean, we were talking about the Padres' new hire this just a few moments ago in the beginning of the show, and how he was a player development guy, but he's also a very good stats guy as well. And they're going to need somebody with that type of background. It doesn't have to be a big name, but just somebody to really get them in the right direction.
Yeah, I completely agree, Tom. That's what you want. And I would like to see a younger guy, too. You know, this is a young team. This is a nice ball club that wants to get that extra step, and that's what they need. This is the pitching is what prevented them from going to the World Series this year. And who knows, with the right pitching coach, maybe another arm on the mound, what they could do next season.
See, here's a dream scenario that I have, even though it probably will not happen. We're going to stick with the topic of Luis Severino. Remember when Pedro Martinez kind of mentored him before 2017, and he had that amazing year? He had a consistent arm angle with all his pitches. He started to develop that changeup. I don't think this will happen, but boy, do I want Pedro Martinez to be the pitching coach of the Yankees.
Really?
Yeah, I would love that. Wow. That is my dream hire for the New York Yankees. I know because he was killing the Yankees when he was playing, mostly in the late 90s, early 2000s. It probably will not happen, but that would be my ideal dream scenario. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll give you... I mean, I'll raise you another scenario, Jesse. A lot of people I've seen on Twitter want this. We all know that CC Sabathia is retiring.
Yeah.
Why not bring him in as a pitching coach? He said he's wanted to stay on the Yankees in some aspect. Maybe he'll just be a special advisor to Brian Cashman next season. But, I mean, is he a good option? I mean, he might just be a little bit too friendly with his team, so that could be the option. But I think he'll be the honest guy in the dugout.
I think he is the veteran leader that they need, and I wouldn't mind seeing him because he knows what these guys can do. He knows their strengths. He knows their weaknesses. I think he wouldn't be a bad addition, but I think a fresh face that would help know what to fix would be better and be more analytical.
What I do like about CC Sabathia is that he was able to get it done being both kinds of pitchers. Back early in his career, he's able to throw fastballs mid to upper 90s. He was able to throw a devastating slider, mix in maybe some curveballs and changeups, get those guys out. But then he kind of had to readjust himself. He had a couple of nice years being a finesse guy, throwing, upper 80s, lower 90s, starting to throw more cutters, not just, throwing a four-seam fastball as hard as he could. Really relying on that, the slider, the breaking ball. So I like that he's kind of got it done being both kinds of pitchers. He kind of had a bit of a slump back in 2013 and 14. He didn't really make a lot of starts. And in 2015, he was kind of a mess. He also had some issues with his knee.
Yeah.
But I do like how CC Sabathia was able to get it done by being both kinds of pitchers. I think that he'd be able to kind of relate to not just a fireballer like Luis Severino, but somebody like Jordan Montgomery who doesn't throw that fast might really be able to get along with him very well.
Yeah, and you mentioned the adjustments he had to make earlier in the career. If he knew he had to make adjustments, then he'll know when his pitchers would have to make adjustments immediately in the season when it's needed most.
Absolutely. And, back to Larry Rothschild for just a moment. We mentioned how CC Sabathia kind of got it done both sides, but here's the problem that I had with CC being not that great for that long is that it took 3 years to fix him. Three, yeah. Not just one bad year in 2013. Like, he was bad consistently. And another problem, there have been pitchers that have come and gone from New York that have been awful in New York, but they've been great elsewhere. A.J. Burnett, Larry Rothschild's first year was A.J. Burnett's last year in New York. Sonny Gray was here for about a year and a half. Didn't do well. Was an all-star this year in Cincinnati, although I think he was kind of whining a lot about how the Yankees made him throw a couple pitches he didn't want to. It kind of brings up the question, he wasn't really getting along with the pitching coach.
Yeah, it's a valid point there, Jesse. I really like that because I think you could kind of see this. I always said this too, like with A.J. Burnett. I was like, man, we could have had, he could have been a great ace for us. And then he just goes and does so well over in Pittsburgh. And then now Sonny Gray. And Philly. And now Sonny Gray this season. So it really speaks to what happened in that pitching staff there.
Well, I think you guys summed it up well. And now let's change topics a little bit. Let's break down some of the biggest storylines of the New York Yankees season. And I think the one that we have to talk about the most is the plague that hit the Bronx in the beginning of the year. And it sent a record number of individuals to the injured list. But that led to the next man up mentality, not only in the fan culture, but also in the dugout.
I think Brian Cashman needs to take Stevie Donahue, the trainer for the Yankees, into his office and be like, dude, what happened? I know that sounds weird, but when there is 30 players that have hit the injured list at some point this year, and it wasn't just like one guy. It wasn't like one guy just. It was 30 players.
Guys, yep.
And it was guys that kept relapsing. Betances, he had that shoulder problem, relapsed twice. Severino, same thing. Stanton had not one, not two, not three, but four. Four regular season injuries. And then in the playoffs, when he was playing, when he got all these days off in the playoffs because of the playoff schedule, after game 1 of the ALCS, after having almost a week off because they swept the Twins, he hasn't played games 2, 3, or 4 because he strained his quad. What?
His quad of all things, the outfielder strains his quad.
Like Terrell Owens played with like a screwed up leg in the Super Bowl in 2004 or 2005, and you can't play with. Come on, really?
Yeah.
But, I mean, besides, like, the people who've hit the injured list, let's at least acknowledge the men that have stepped up to really make this season something special. Starting with an AL MVP candidate. He probably won't win the award, but at least he's definitely an honorable mention. And that would be DJ LeMahieu, David John, who made 26 balls long gone this season.
La Machine.
DJ LeMahieu is the best $24 million that this team has spent in I don't know how long.
Easily.
But it's the best $24 million they've spent in a while. He was a good player in Colorado, but I remember the concerns of him hitting away from Coors Field because they were legitimate. His road numbers were not good. But he comes into New York and he just tears it up. He was much better than I anticipated, or I'm sure anybody anticipated when he came to the Bronx.
Definitely the best addition, I would say, for definitely the Yankees in the offseason, but you can argue who's maybe the best addition of the whole free agency last year. I mean, you had guys like Manny Machado and Patrick Corbin and Bryce Harper, and Bryce and Manny were commanding over $300 million. We got this guy for 2 years, $24 million, as you mentioned, Jesse. And to be an MVP candidate when especially the other two guys in the National League, they couldn't do good. I mean, Patrick Corbin, he's in the World Series right now, so he set himself up pretty nicely. But I mean, DJ LeMahieu, just such a fantastic player, improving his game all around the diamond.
I have a question for you guys. Of all these injuries that happened this season for the Yankees, who was your favorite player that stepped up big? You know, that utility guy that came up and we're like, wow. Who is it?
Gio Urshela.
I was still mine. All right.
All right. You know what? All right. So I'll let you talk about Gio Urshela. I'll talk about a different guy, Mike Talkman.
Actually,
no. You know what?
Be my guy.
Oh, you're stealing all our guys, Jesse.
All right, fine. You know what? All right, fine. Cameron Maben. All right, we'll go to Cameron Maben. This guy is a speedster who has been good, not great, but he always gets hurt, and that's his big problem.
Yeah.
He comes to the Yankees, had that issue in the middle of the season where he was on the IL, one of the 6,000 players that got hurt, but he was pretty good. And it's funny because you're thinking, Stanton, Judge, Hicks, Nair, Frazier, who needs Gardner? Why is Cameron Maben here? When is Mike Talkman ever going to be called up to the major leagues? Cameron Maben actually played pretty well and was on their postseason roster.
Yeah.
That is how good he was. So I'm going to say him, and I know you guys are getting into Talkman and Urshela, but I just want to mention real quick, Mike Ford, what a beast. David Hale came back from overseas to pitch back in Major League Baseball. He was also amazing before he suffered from, I forget the injury, but I know that during the rehab he had a knee injury that ended his season. But now I'm going to hand the floor over to you guys to talk about Mike Talkman and Gio Urshela.
Tom?
All right, cool. I'll go first. So Mike Talkman, another guy that came out of Colorado this year, minus DJ LeMahieu. And Mike Talkman was kind of like a laughingstock at one point.
Yeah, he was.
which now I kind of regret, but I think we also got to give a shout out to Eric Hubbs of Barstool Sports, because apparently, if you haven't been following Barstool Sports, they've pretty much been saying if you go on their podcast, then you'll do better. And just based on Talkman's numbers alone, I think that value holds up. He had 3.6 WAR on the year. That's definitely above average, to say the least. In 296 plate appearances, he has 13 home runs, 47 RBIs, only struck out 71 times, which I guess isn't that bad.
No,
and then he had a batting average of 277, but even a better on-base percentage of 361. This guy could get it done not only on the field, but he could get it done at bat as well.
Yep, and my guy, WRHU, he had 21 home runs, 314 batting average. This guy was clutch. He was their guy that they needed to step up in that middle of the season there. He was perfect. I love Gio. He was just perfect. Perfect third baseman and shortstop. He filled everything. He filled in Didi's role perfectly, and it was great.
Something about Mike Talkman real quick.
Back to Mike Talkman.
Since July 4th until the end of the season, where he suffered a season-ending injury, I think it was his calf. 48 games, 46 of those started, 9 home runs, 33 runs batted in. He hit .325, had an on-base of .403, and he slugged .584. So for about a good chunk of the season, I say a quarter of the season, a guy that nobody's ever heard of, who came from Colorado like 2 minutes before the season started, was a 300, 400, 500 guy down the stretch who's able to hit for power and get on base as well, because he struck out only 33 times in that span. He walked 20 times, and he had 50 hits.
And unfortunately, Talkman did have to take a long, extended stint on the injured list. I think it was after the July trade deadline that happened. And it's just really sad to see such a productive guy really not do well. But let's talk about another big story real quickly as we are about to wrap up our Yankee segment here on the Batters Box on 88.7 FM WRHU. Those Savages in the Box by Aaron Boone. I've probably quoted that many of time over the course of the regular season, but this had to be the rallying cry when the team needed it most.
Oh, it was so perfect. It was right in July there, right when the players are getting down, and Boone comes out and says, "My boys are savages in the box." It was perfect. It rallied the whole team. The whole fan base was like, "Oh."
There are T-shirts about it.
There's T-shirts about it. Like all those Boone haters or naysayers, once they saw that, they're like, "I'm with this guy. We're going through everything with this. I'll run through a brick wall with Aaron Boone right now saying that." Absolutely. How about you guys?
I mean, I always envisioned him as more of a silent, partner almost. He is always very reserved. But just to see the sheer anger in this man's veins popping out at the umpire.
This man loves baseball. I mean, back when I was interning back in the springtime with WABC 7, and I got to go to Media Day with Yankee Stadium for preseason. And when I was in the press conference, and Boone walked out behind the curtain and sat in his chair and was like, "Happy New Year." You knew. I was like, oh, man, this guy's just ready. I was like,
this guy's ready for 2019.
He's ready. He said, "Happy New Year's Eve." He was ready for baseball to start. He just loves everything about it. And I just love this guy already.
I mean, that was kind of the knock against him in the beginning, that he was kind of a low-energy guy.
Yeah.
Or not a low-energy guy, but I guess the team around him was low energy. Like, remember in 2017, they'd have the thumbs down celebration?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, like, there was all that, and then there was, like, really nothing the next
18
year.
18 was just kind of like,
whatever.
It's something we don't like talking about.
I mean, they didn't really have a chance at division for, like, the entire second half of the season, so that could be why. But then 2019, like, when they're playing for the division, when they're playing for seeding, they're having all that fun, and they rally up the fan base as well with the Savages in the Box memorabilia.
Oh,
that was definitely a great thing to see.
Absolutely. Okay, so we got enough time to talk about something very briefly. So, expectations for next year.
Oof.
Okay. Everybody was saying World Series or bust this season. I most certainly said that once the Yankees got eliminated. Kyle, what do you think?
It's got to be the same mentality next season. Am I right?
Yeah.
It has to be. Because next season, you look at the teams around in the AL, Didi's a free agent. But other than that, if they add the right pieces in the offseason, the rest of the AL, if Cole leaves to Houston, I could honestly see them taking it. This has been the one kryptonite to this team the past couple of years. If Cole leaves Houston, I could honestly see that happening.
I think with CeCe's contract coming off the books.
Exactly.
And I think with one more painful year of Ellsbury's contract, Jesus, oh my
We don't want
goodness.
to talk about that. Yeah.
So when they have one more year of that, and with CeCe's contract coming off the books, I think that Aaron Boone is definitely going to be aggressive going after a free agent pitcher. Look at the free agent class. Garrett Cole, but look beyond that. Hyun-Jin Ryu, Madison Bumgarner, Steven Strasburg, if he opts out. The list goes on and on and on. They're going to add a starting pitcher, and I think that could help them when they get to 2020.
Now, the question is going to be real quickly, will Brian Cashman pull the trigger? Based off of this past or last offseason, I would say no, but now I think he's got to.
He's got to. They haven't made a
his mentality.
Yeah. The
Absolutely.
pressure is on more than ever, especially since they haven't made a World Series in 10 seasons.
Money, they don't care about money. They care about prospects, but now when it comes down to money, I would expect nothing less.
Exactly.
Exactly. So thank you, Jesse Lindell, for coming on to talk about the New York Yankees as our Yankees expert. And with that being said, that will end our final discussion on the New York Yankees season. And coming up in hour 2 of the season finale of the Batter's Box in just a few moments, we will talk about the New York Mets, break down the biggest stories across the league this past season, and we will also discuss how the offseason might shape out. But first, a sports update with Ryan Ginio.
Thanks, guys. The Islanders are not playing tonight, but they will be back in action on Friday as they battle the Lightning at NYCB Live, home of the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. The Isles will come into Friday's game on a hot streak, winning their last 7 in a row. Puck drops at 7 o'clock here on WRHU and the Islanders Radio Network. Elsewhere around the NHL, the Devils lead the Lightning 4-3 at the end of the second period, while Edmonton has a 4-1 lead over Columbus in the second period. From the ice to the diamond, Game 7 of the World Series is underway at Minute Maid Park. The Astros lead 1-0 in the bottom of the third inning thanks to a solo shot from Yuri Gurriel. This is the 4th winner-take-all classic to go to 7 games in the past 6 seasons. Washington are looking to win their first World Series in franchise history. Their ace Max Scherzer returns to the mound after upper back spasms kept him out of Game 5. Before the game, he shared how a cortisone shot has helped his preparation for tonight. Meanwhile, for Houston, they seek to win their second title in 3 years. Manager A.J. Hinch spoke before the game to share his thoughts heading into Game 7.
I don't know that there's a lot of explanation or any fancy quote that you got to give you guys or them.
Sound courtesy of the Houston Astros. Finally, over to the hardwood, the Knicks are in the Sunshine State as they battle the Magic. New York trails 84-80 in the fourth quarter. With your sports update, I'm Ryan Ginio. Now let's step back inside the batter's box with Tom Bauer and Kyle Byrne.
Proudly broadcasting from the Richard Philip Cavallaro studio.
WRHU.
Hempstead.
You discovered.
A cornerstone of the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication.
WRHU.
Hey, I'm Dave Lennon, Newsday's national baseball columnist, and you're listening to The Batter's Box on 88.7 FM, WRHU.
Thank you, Ryan, for that update. And we're back inside the Batter's Box right here on 88.7 FM WRHU, also streaming live on Facebook at WRHU Sports. Now for this hour, we're going to start off with our specialist, Eddie Gardner, coming on to talk about the Mets season and all about that.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets.
Eddie, how you doing?
I'm a little sad. It's
sad?
the last one of
I
the
know.
year.
We're all.
I mean, I've loved coming on here every single week, so I'm gonna miss it. But I'll be back next spring for the 2020 season. But here to talk some Mets finally. It feels great to talk Mets finally after the last 2 weeks talking about the Nationals. So here we go. I'm gonna quickly recap the season. Probably the weirdest season I've ever experienced watching this team. Just because of how bad they were, how horrible they looked in April, in May, in June. By the way, June is their arch rival. You know, bigger than the Nationals, bigger than the Phillies. June is their arch rival because of how horribly they play in June. I got right here the last 2 seasons combined 15-39 record in June.
Ooh,
don't know how that's possible. But so they started out a little bit slow in the early months, you know, March, April, May, and then June hits. And that puts them over the edge as one of the worst teams in the league. And so they get down to around 40-51. That's their record. But then something happens. I don't know what happened. Let's see, around mid-July to August is when they start this improbable comeback and, you know, get themselves 6-7 games over 500.
Yeah.
Get themselves into wild card contention. They are 2 games out after, you know, winning 15 of 16. How do you do that after being 40-51? So that's why I think this is just the weirdest season I've ever experienced, because they got us out of the hole. They give us all this hope, and then they crush our dreams. They lose 6 straight to the Cubs and to the Braves, who are leading in the division and the wild card. And then, you know, they they get out of the hole again. They sweep Arizona, the 3 games back now. And then they crush our dreams again. On ESPN, on Sunday Night Baseball, you know, in front of the whole country, they embarrass themselves again. And so that's the season that I experienced watching this team so far.
The highs were very high and the lows were pretty low.
The highs were very high, the lows were very low.
And that's the best way to
The
put it.
highest high was probably that game against the Nationals, where they had the insane 9th inning comeback, Todd Frazier with the 3-run homer, Michael Conforto with the double. Lowest of lows against the Nationals, where they were up 10-4 in the 9th inning.
Oh.
Mickey Callaway, the genius, Mickey Callaway, brings in Paul Sewald. He doesn't work out. So they bring in Luis Avalon. He does not work out. They bring in Edwin Diaz. He doesn't work out. They give up 7 runs in the 9th inning. That's unheard of. Unheard of.
Well, it's not unheard of now because the Mets did that.
The Mets did it. Okay? And so that was the lowest of low. I went to the game first game of the Cleveland series, where, you know, they were still on this run. They swept Cleveland. That was the beginning of it.
Yep.
The atmosphere in that stadium was electric. Felt like a playoff series. The players were into it. The fans were into it. Then I went to the Sunday Night Baseball game against the Dodgers. The fans were into it. The players were not into it. They were just, I don't know what happened. They looked like a completely different team, because the offense wasn't there. Zach Wheeler was dominant, but still the bullpen gave it up.
Yeah.
I think that was the end of the season. That was the official end of the season, because that really pushed them pretty far back. So, yeah, just an up and down year.
Definitely up and down, and I think the bar was set really high in the offseason when Brody comes in as the new GM. He trades for Edwin Diaz and Robinson Cano, signs Jed Lowry, Wilson Ramos, and Jerry's Familia back again, just et cetera and so forth. But nothing really panned out, really. I mean, Lowry was hurt the entire year, just pretty much.
Don't get me started about Jed Lowry. I thought he died in the middle of the season. I don't know what happened to him, really.
He was just gone.
Anthony DiComo, who tweeted out, I think, like, in mid-season, what happened to Jed Lowry? Is he alive? Like, you know.
Is he okay?
Is he okay? Is he...
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend, yes.
Does he need a doctor?
Yes. Does he need a doctor? What's going on with him? And so Jed Lowry and Yoenis Cespedes, the biggest 2 guys out there who contributed to this nightmarish season. Even though they didn't do anything, they still contributed to this nightmarish season.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd say that.
But without But you can't mention the Mets season without mentioning the squirrel and the polar bear taking over the Queens.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course.
I mean, Jeff McNeil, a.k.a. the squirrel. I mean, he set his own. I thought he was going to be the early Rookie of the Year contender just by hitting over 340 for at least half of the season until
he led he led the major leagues for the majority of the year in batting average until he got hurt. So you talk about McNeil and Alonso. I think to take positives out of this year, they had Alonso, they had McNeil, they had J.D. Davis come out of nowhere and put up a solid season. With McNeil, though, the only concern about him is after he got back from injury, his average dipped a lot and his power went up. So he was batting 340 when he got hurt. And then when he came back, his average dropped to around 318, but he hit 15, 16 homers in the last 2 months. So that's for me. I don't know what to expect from McNeil next year. Is it going to be the choppy hitter who bloops balls into left field for base hits, or is he going to be hitting balls in the Coca-Cola corner? I don't know. I like to see both.
Well, I can tell you right now, if you were to play for the Yankees, he'd be hitting a lot more baseballs next year over to short porch. But I think he'll regress a little bit. Maybe he'll be like a 280, 290 hitter.
Yeah, I can see around there.
I mean, not every day do you get the Ichiro Suzukis of the game that can hit above 300 for 10-plus seasons. I don't think McNeil's really that guy. I mean, Ichiro had his wheels to rely on, but McNeil, I mean, it's really just his golden bat, but that's really good. But then Pete Alonso, I just want to touch on a little bit more. Saying the rookie record-breaking Aaron Judge is by hitting 53 home runs in his rookie season. I mean, that's Aaron Judge level. That's Mark McGwire level.
That's some big stuff. Yeah.
I mean, this guy is going to go on to do so many great things, and I think we can all agree that he will be the captain of the New York Mets for many of years to come.
He's going to be named captain? I don't think anyone's going to be named captain after David Wright, really.
Really?
Not for some time, at least, because of how important of a player he was, how impactful he was, and basically how he got sent off in that last game. I think it'll be some time until we name another captain. But Pete Alonso...
You think he could be it, though?
He's the right guy for it. After he led everyone back. I don't give much credit to Callaway. I think Pete Alonso led that team back just because of coming out of the All-Star break. I don't know if you saw, he had that long post on Instagram, and the bottom he started the LFGM thing.
Yeah,
so that raised this team back from the dead. I think he rallied this team back. He was confident. Since day one. So, Pete Alonso for manager, everybody. Pete Alonso can be the player manager of this team. He can lead us.
Just such a great personality from Pete Alonso, just to see his pure passion for the game. And not just that, but he also does so much for the New York community, especially with the 9/11 tributes this year.
Yeah, that was amazing. You really like to see that.
Yeah, just such a great guy, and he's going to be the man in the Queens to come. But earlier today, me and Eddie got a chance to speak with Anthony DiComo, the Mets beat writer for MLB.com, and we're just going to pull some of the things that we thought jumped out most. And Eddie, what do you have to say?
Yeah, so we started talking about reflecting on the season as a whole, and so a lot of people are saying, "Oh, this was such a success." We got to 86. They got to 86 wins. They had a big run in the second half. Anthony DiComo wasn't on that train. He was saying this is a failure. They didn't reach their ultimate goal, which is making the playoffs, going all the way. Even though they had that big run, they had the guys like Alonso and Davis and McNeil and DeGrom. Still, the way it ended was very disappointing, just because of how they went on an insane winning streak, and then they, ended on a disappointing run, getting swept by all those teams ahead of them. So he viewed the season as disappointing, and I kind of agree with him because of how depressed I was after the year. Saying how they were this close, That's a failure. That's a failed season.
I think it's pretty clear and blatantly obvious this is a failed season. I mentioned the high expectations before, with especially Cano and Diaz. Diaz, he started off midway through May as a really reliable closer, I think we can all agree on. But, Robinson Cano, he had the first 3 games against the Phillies hitting, I think it was 1 or 2 home runs within that series. And then he just fell off the place of the planet.
He did.
And now he's going to be that new Jacoby Ellsbury contract for the New York Mets.
Oh, my God.
And, he's just going to be burdensome. He came back to New York. Everybody was happy. Oh, yeah, Robinson's back in New York. But apparently he wore the wrong uniform and got the wrong memo.
I will say one thing about Cano. as bad as he was in the first half, a week before he got hurt in, I want to say it was August, he was on fire.
Yeah.
Really, he brought his average up to around 260 after it being in the 230s. And then even after when he got back from the injured list, he was still very productive. He had the 3-homer game that one time, and he still put up some big games to help the team try to go on finish this run. Unfortunately, he did tail off again in the year.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens at age 36 or age 37 for Robinson Cano. Now, speaking of Cano and Diaz, we were talking about the most exciting players to watch, surprising and disappointing. So just like every Met fan, every person watching baseball, DeComo had to talk about Pete Alonso, the most surprising on the team. Who expected him to hit 53 home runs? Yes, I think a lot of people I did expected him to do well, possibly win Rookie of the Year, but I was thinking maybe 25 home runs.
Yeah.
He hit 53. Who expected him to break the all-time rookie home run record and become one of the best hitters in the game? Another guy I mentioned, J.D. Davis. I love J.D. Davis. He came out of nowhere from Houston. I think the Mets stole him from Houston, basically. He didn't have anywhere to play on this team. As we're watching, they're talented all throughout the lineup. He had no place for them. The Mets got a pretty important spot for him. J.D. Davis came out and had 22 home runs, drove in 60 runs. He was supposed to be the backup to Todd Frazier, and he ended up taking that role from Todd Frazier. Even though he had a pretty good year, J.D. Davis had a better year. A better year. And then the most disappointing, Diaz and Cano. But Cano, not so much. Diaz was the guy to blame. And you come out after a 1.27 ERA with 59 saves, and then have a 5.59 ERA and 7 blown saves. I mean, it was. I couldn't believe what I was watching. One game I went to against the Phillies, I was like, Diaz is not going to blow this one. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
He gives up the home run to JT Realmuto. I threw a temper tantrum in Citi Field. And really, I did.
It's just part of the deal.
Part of the deal. I was like, I was saying to myself, I cannot believe this is happening. I've never seen anything like this before. I'm like, this is impossible to happen to a guy like Edwin Diaz of his talent. And so that's some of the guys that he was mentioning. Now, again, with Diaz, we were talking about how, what can we expect from him?
Mm-hmm.
And so he was mentioning how he doesn't think he will enter the year as the team's closer, not after this year. But really, they don't have a closer now because Familia is not the guy.
Mm-hmm.
They can't bring in Wilson for the 9th inning every time.
You can't trust him.
And so it's really going to be a question with how Diaz is used. They don't really know how they're going to use Diaz yet, just because they don't have a manager yet. They get Brody. And whoever they hire is going to have to talk about Diaz because that's obviously an important player. Now, Brody did say they're going to keep Diaz. We'll see if that actually happens.
Yeah, we'll see if
happens.
True his word.
But I think he could have a bounce back year. I think he'll be valuable.
Well, if I may propose a possible game plan that the Mets could take, but of course, again, we don't know the manager. Why not use Familia and Diaz alternatively night after night as the team's closers? I mean,
they tried.
They tried and it failed. But why not try it again? If at first you don't succeed, try again. Didn't we learn that?
Sure, they tried so many times.
Isn't that called insanity, Tom? Doing the same thing over and over again?
They tried a lot of times.
Is that what it's called? Insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result?
Yeah,
I don't know. It might be insanity, but we'll try it.
Well, Diaz came out and said that next year he's going to be the guy the Mets fans want to see. We'll see if that happens. So then Jed Lowry and Yoenis Cespedes, I asked what can Mets fans expect from those two guys. Now, Jed Lowry and Cespedes probably won't have starting job. Well, Cespedes probably will. Lowry will not have a starting job because of guys like J.D. Davis, Ahmed Rosario, Jeff McNeil. There's no room for a 36-year-old bum who played 2 games this year. So, but with
throwing shade.
Sorry, but I'm saying.
Put it lightly.
I'm a Jed Lowry fan. I thought it was a great signing. It's just I was very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Now Cespedes, he's on track to return next year, but the question is, will he be able to actually remain on the field for a full season? He hasn't been able to do that since the Mets got him. He missed time in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. He missed over at least 40 games in all those seasons. And so that's the question on whether he can actually stay healthy. I believe my hot take for next year is Cespedes wins NL Comeback Player of the Year. That's my bold prediction for next season.
That's a very.
It's not Anthony DeComo's bold prediction because he said he's not going to really have that great of an impact.
I mean, I have to agree with Anthony on this one.
I believe, sorry, Tom.
And before we continue on here inside the Barrers Box on 88.7 FM, WRHU, also on Facebook Live currently at the moment. It's the middle of the fourth inning right now. Houston still leads 1-0 over the Washington Nationals in Game 7 of the World Series. Zach Greinke and Max Scherzer both still on the mound for their respective franchises. And now, Eddie, we're just going to continue on with some of the best quotes from Anthony DeComo.
Yeah, we're going to go into the manager, the search now. The manager search
this is
now.
still a big thing. They're still the only yet to hire one.
They don't have a manager.
The Cubs.
They've narrowed it down to 4 guys. When talking with DeComo, he mentioned the 4 guys that are being brought in for third interviews. Carlos Beltran. Shelton who's the Twins, I think, bench coach.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Bogart, the Nationals bench coach, and then Eduardo Perez, who broadcasts for ESPN. I don't know how he got into the mix, but he is a top candidate for this Mets managerial team.
I mean, he's got a good mind. He was a former catcher in the big leagues.
Catcher. He managed in Puerto Rico, so he's got experience, just not in the big leagues. So he said that DeComo, when asking about it, he said there's no really front runner yet. We don't know what's going to happen. Just because of all these guys have a great shot. And then I talked about Girardi, whether or not that was the right choice, to not be super aggressive on him and take their time with him. And we honestly won't know until we get to the season because whoever they hire, Perez, Shelton, Bogart, we don't really know who's going to be the right choice until we get, midway through the season. And we'll see how Girardi does in Philly. So that's really not known yet. And then finally, the offseason. What are they going to do? They got a lot of holes to fill. The bullpen, the starting pitching, they probably need another outfielder. Mm-hmm. But what Anthony DeComo was saying is the most important is the starting pitching. So, I am surprised about that, considering how bad the bullpen was. And the big guy is Zach Wheeler, who is going to be a free agent after this year. If they lose him, they'll have 4 starting pitchers. And they can't have that, obviously. So he's the number 1 guy to bring back. If they don't bring him back, he mentioned guys like Jake Odorizzi who can fill that spot. But Zach Wheeler is the main guy, as he was saying. There's a huge amount of relief pitchers that are out there that they could sign. But in order to have a solid guy out there every day, DeGrom, Syndergaard, Stroman, Matz, and they need Wheeler. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest need.
See, what I think that Brody should have done is trade Wheeler at the deadline.
You thought?
I mean, they were playing really well at the time, though. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. So, I mean, it's tough to really gauge whether or not you should have been traded, but you could have at least gotten some value off of him. Now you have no idea what you're going to get off of him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more right there.
I mean, he's the guy. That's what he was saying. He's the number 1 guy. They got to get. Mm-hmm. I liked the idea of not trading Wheeler because they wanted to go for it. Yeah. And Wheeler was a stud in the second half.
He was,
and so he's due for a big contract.
Absolutely. And we'll see if he gets a big contract. We'll keep following the offseason. And that's going to do it for our last Mets discussion of the year here inside the Barrers Box on 88.7 FM WRHU. We are streaming currently live on Facebook at WRHU Sports. If you are tuning in on your radio and you want to take a look at us and see us in our mixing site studio.
Beautiful site here we have right now.
Absolutely. But again, thank you to Eddie Gardner for ranting about the Mets with us one last time this season. And when we return, we are going to talk about the past year in baseball and also about the future offseason that officially begins in, unfortunately, a few hours. But first, a sports update with Zevin Schuster.
Thanks, guys. After winning 7 straight games, the Islanders are back on the ice this Friday when they face the Tampa Bay Lightning. Puck drop is at 7 o'clock at NYCB Live, home of the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. It is winner take all tonight as Game 7 of the World Series is underway in Houston, with the Astros leading the Nationals 1-0 in the top of the 4th inning. Tonight's matchup is the first Game 7 matchup between 2 former Cy Young Award winners in World Series history. Zach Greinke gets the ball for Houston, and just 3 days after having excruciating back spasms, Nationals ace Max Scherzer is on the mound for the Nationals in the biggest game of his career. Washington skipper Dave Martinez is confident his ace is healthy and ready to take the hill in the do-or-die showdown.
Yeah, I know for me, and I talked to Max, he feels good. I spoke to him last night and again today, and, it's based on conversations throughout the game, he's going to go as far as he can take it, but he feels good.
Sound courtesy of Fox Sports. Martinez's counterpart AJ Hinch is managing his second career World Series Game 7, and he is well aware that the series decider is unlike any other game in baseball.
It's fun. It's stressful because you want to make the right decision every single time. You want to deploy your best players, the best opportunities you can. But Game 7 is one of the best games in baseball. But
Sound courtesy of Fox Sports. To the hardwood, the Knicks trail the Orlando Magic 93-82, led by 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists from Julius Randle, while the Nets trail the Indiana Pacers by a score of 81-77. Kyrie Irving has 22 points, 6 assists, and 6 rebounds in that one. With your sports update, I'm Zevin Schuster. Now let's step back into the batter's box with Kyle and Tom.
This is Pete McCarthy from WRHU, radio home of the New York Mets, and you're listening to the Batter's Box on 88.7 FM WRHU.
Thank you, Zevin Schuster, for that update. Now we're going to move on to recapping the whole MLB season with our very own Vinny Laspinusa. Vinny, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kyle. I have had a blast this season, and I hope you two have as well.
Oh, we have. This has been an incredible season, producing the show and watching some MLB and having you on to come talk about it.
And just listening to all your fun moments that you've had over the course of the whole season. And, of course, we just thank everybody for their dedication this season to putting in for the Batter's Box, those who are in tonight, and you too, Vinny.
Oh, thanks, Tom. It really means a lot, especially knowing you since freshman year when we dormed together.
Yeah. Extreme makeover. Former roommate edition.
That's a good one.
All right, Vinny, let's get into this recapping of the MLB season.
Well, the first thing we need to mention is that I don't think many people have really mentioned this, but this is the MLB's 150th season.
Wow.
And, the Cincinnati Reds have also had their 150th season. So how did they prepare for this? It's simple. By wearing a throwback once in a while. Like one time they wore an all-navy one time they wore their one for their gear from the 90s. It was just
That's pretty cool. I like that.
incredible.
I like that a lot. That's a cool way to to go through the decades almost, go decade by decade and show off how long they've been around. And that's a very storied franchise that really no one really knows about.
Well, of course, they're the most storied franchise, and technically because, they're the oldest franchise.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. But before the season, we all heard about the drama of free agency. It just went on forever. When's Machado going to sign? When's Harper going to sign? Well, we found out what happened. Harper went to the Phillies, and he was okay. Got a 13-year deal. Good luck with that, Phillies. Thanks a lot, Scott Boras. And as for Machado, he had a better season with the Padres, but compared to his other season, it wasn't as good. Meanwhile, Keuchel and Kimbrel waited all the way until June to sign with their teams. Keuchel was with his time with the Braves. It was a one-year deal, so not really much of a blowback. But as for Kimbrel, he really stunk it up this year with the Cubs.
And see, the problem with the Kimbrel deal is that's a 3-year contract. They're going to have to undertake, I believe it was like $43 or $46 million.
Yes, it was a few. It was a few more deals.
I don't know. I mean, I understand the logic behind Theo Epstein and his move there. But, I mean, just the way Kimbrel, he's pitched poorly this season. His ERA is well over 4, probably well over 5 and 6 as well. But, just a disappointing season for him because, honestly, I thought he could have been one of the greatest closers of all time if you were to ask me last season.
Right, yeah, last season he was lights out, Sandman-esque, you could kind of say. This guy was dominant. And this season he just really laid an egg, kind of. And going into it, the Cubs still haven't solved their bullpen issues now. Because the issue was the bullpen in the beginning of the season. It's still the bullpen now. So Kimbrel didn't do that, and he was absolutely a mess for them.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I do think Kimbrel will help turn things around, sort of like how Darvish got a little bit better this season. But we just got to take it year by year.
Exactly.
Speaking of disappointments, why don't we talk about a few disappointments this season?
Let's do that.
Oh, let's talk about the team that Kimbrel used to play for, the Boston Red Sox. Last year, 108 wins, record amount.
Yeah. They had a lucky season.
Beat the Dodgers in the World Series again. But then this year, 84 wins. 84 wins, not as good. Just third in their division, which was relatively weak.
Almost like a World Series hangover.
It really was a World Series hangover. At least the Dodgers made the playoffs and were the number 1 seed again. They got over 100 wins. Red Sox couldn't even sniff the playoffs.
No.
Now, they did have a few good quality players this year. They had Rafael Devers really stepped up. I mean, he's going to be a good asset there for years to come. Okay, we're going to have to talk about disappointments because that's the one.
That's the one.
Xander Bogaerts. That's the one I was also thinking of that did really well. But now we got to talk about their disappointments. And Chris Sale, that's probably their most disappointing this year, going above a 4 ERA in the season. Just did not look like the Chris Sale that signed for such a big contract for the Boston Red Sox. And I think it's just all attributed to the injury he suffered.
Yeah, I think so too. Once he had that injury, it just showed like he wasn't the same. He wasn't what he was like in 2018, 2017. Like it just wasn't there. He just didn't have that extra spark of energy that he needed. It wasn't there.
Yeah, and then another disappointing name that I think he's just an overrated player is Andrew Benintendi.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just not a great season for the Boston Red Sox all around, and that was proven by finishing third in the American League East Division, only winning 84 games.
It's just a disappointment. But again, we're talking about this teams that have hype, teams that you expect a lot from the offseason. And you look at the Philadelphia Phillies. You get Gene Segura, you get JT Realmuto, and you get the biggest fish in the pond in Bryce Harper, and you finish 4th in your division. That is uncalled for, and Gabe Kepler deserves to be fired. I don't really say that a lot, but you're a team that many people think could you get the number 1 seed in the entire NL and you go 500? Why?
I think they had the perfect offense really secured for their entire team. Unfortunately, Andrew McCutchen went down very early in the season with an injury, so that hurt his season a lot. But ultimately, besides Aaron Nola and Hector Neris, I mentioned this before, it's just their pitching that really ultimately disappointed them. It's not the ultimate Achilles heel because, their lineup isn't full of a whole lot of contact hitters.
No.
So, I guess they just have to find a way to maybe balance their lineup a little bit more if they want to have more success next season.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of 2018 Yankees when they had too many power hitters and they didn't have enough, balanced hitters, who can get the guys on base and, get runners in scoring position and stuff like that. So I think maybe with the acquisition of Girardi as manager, maybe we could see some work done there, and hopefully we could see them in the postseason.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but let's be a little bit positive this time. Why don't we talk about a couple surprises?
All right, let's do that.
The Minnesota Twins were a team that a few people did think would potentially go to the playoffs and win their division, even though the Indians were the clear favorite. But what did the Indians do? No, but not the Indians. What did the Twins do this year? They were a hitting machine, home run after home run after home run, to the point that they broke the record for most amount of home runs in a season, in a phenomenal season where they won their division, won 101 games, second time in their history they ever had won 100 or more games, all led by rookie manager Rocco Baldelli, who, in case you don't remember, played for the Rays back in the 2000s.
When they were called the Devil Rays.
Wow.
Devil Rays. Those Devil Rays teams were awful.
No, yeah, they're bad.
But, yeah, we all know how it ended, again, getting swept by the Yankees. But still, don't let that distract you from the fact that this was a team that people did not expect to be this good.
No.
Now let's just hope for their sake next year they can get some good, pitching help.
Yeah. Tom.
Again, I think it just comes down to lineup balance. A lot of home run hitters, the first team to reach 300 home runs collectively as a team in a single season. But a lot of guys were stepping up there, especially Jorge Polanco, I think, was probably their MVP of the year, doing it a little bit of everything, almost like DJ LeMahieu this year.
I like that analogy a lot, Tom. That's a good one. They were both, very valuable to the team, but very underappreciated. Not under. Would you say underappreciated? I would say like undervalued.
Yeah, undervalued.
Yeah, no one really thought of them as much, but they were very key to their team's success in the long run.
But as the New York Yankees proved last season and the Minnesota Twins proved again this season, home runs are not going to win you world championships. It means you got to do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And then here's another surprise, and I don't think there's any question that this is the biggest surprise of the entire MLB season. The Washington Nationals.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, some people saw them make the playoffs, even though they're a long-time face the franchise. Bryce Harper left to go to the division rival, the Phillies, who we talked about before. And they started 16-31, not a great place to start your season. But what happened? They got hot. They were just cruising along, and they finished. Even though they didn't win the division, they were the first wild card, and in the playoffs, they went through the Brewers. They went through the Dodgers. They swept the Cardinals. And here they are at this present moment. They are playing in Game 7 of the World Series against the almighty Houston Astros.
And by the way, just to chime in real quickly, top of the fifth, 1-0. Houston still leads. Continue.
That's true. You could at least say that they still make it there.
Yeah, no doubt.
And Rendon is the MVP candidate. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't think there's any question that the Nationals are by far the most surprising team of the entire season, especially with how they've been doing in the playoffs.
Rendon has been having a great postseason. He has 20 career postseason RBIs this season, this postseason, which is most for franchise history. That speaks for itself. I think so.
No, you need to mention Steven Strasburg.
Oh, Strasburg, don't you?
He has been. Oh my God! Only Randy Johnson went 5-0 in the playoffs. Keep in mind, this is Randy Johnson, Steven Strasburg.
In the same sentence.
That's how good Strasburg has been. Maybe could be a Hall of Famer, but that's way too down the line. I think that'd be pretty cool, but that's way too early. But hey, this definitely helps them. Even if they lose this game, it's not because of Strasburg, because he has been lights out, and I think if they win, he's going to win World Series MVP.
Yeah, and regardless of what happens to the Nationals in the World Series, I think this proves it's not just the bullpen in this modern-day MLB game that's ultimately going to get you postseason success. If you can have a trifecta of great starting pitching throughout the entire season, I mean, Patrick Corbin's been a little spotty this postseason, but especially with Scherzer and Strasburg, and then, of course, Corbin, you can get anywhere, not just with your bullpen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Strasburg, we keep on going on about Strasburg. He's been lights out. But going back to our disappointments, man, I just realized Justin Verlander doesn't have a win in the World Series.
Yeah, and Verlander also had his third no-hitter this season, and he might win this AL Cy Young Award.
Yeah.
But yet in the World Series, for whatever reason, this guy is winless.
He's winless. Even his time in 2012 with Detroit, and then in 2017, he just can't get that win in the World Series.
But hey, let's look at it this way. It's not going to hurt him in the long run.
No,
He's still a legendary player. It's not going to hurt him.
No, he'll be fine in the long run. No doubt about it.
And you're also looking at, throughout this MLB season, there have been a lot of very, very key moments that we need to understand. For instance, the London series between the Yankees and the Red Sox is something that not many people really talk about for being a very, very important and influential moment in the MLB season. But I would say is potentially a #1 moment, because this was the very first ever MLB series in Europe. And I think this could go well for next season when it's the Cubs and the Cardinals. And I would not be surprised if they have a series in Germany, France. The possibilities are literally endless, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for this.
Just the MLB trying to expand the game. They're doing a pretty good job with that, even though most of the fans that went to London, I'd say over 70% of them was reported that, I mean, they already knew the game of baseball. So, I mean, maybe they should enact more programs just to kind of get people a little bit more familiar with the sport overseas, especially in Europe where it's not as big.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, we saw what they've done in Japan, how they've grown the game there. You know, we saw this year they had the game with Ichiro's last game ever in Japan. So they've grown the game there well. But now it's over in Europe, and it's going to be a total different way. I think the way they should use it is the way that NFL does it. The NFL does a great job.
I love what the NFL does in London. I love what they do in Mexico City. And I think it's going to go on even further, because now the MLB sees, hey, the NFL could do this in London. Why can't we have a bit of a slice of that pie? And I'm very happy they're finally starting this off. And but there is one last moment I do want to mention for the MLB season. Carlos Carrasco.
Yes.
Carlos Carrasco was diagnosed with leukemia, longtime Cleveland Indians pitcher. And the fact that, he won the Roberto Clemente Award and he came back on September 1st in relief against the Rays. That, to me, is probably the most heartwarming and touching story, arguably, of the entire MLB season. What do you think?
I would say so too, yeah.
I mean, the ceremony they had for him in Cleveland during the All-Star break, it was fantastic. It was really heartwarming, and we mentioned that on our All-Star break edition of the Batter's Box. But yeah, Carlos Carrasco, really such an inspiration to many and millions of fans out there around just the world in the MLB. An inspiration not only for just an all-out around inspiration. I can't think of enough words to mention about Carlos Carrasco. But at any rate, Vinny, thank you for coming on to bring us the biggest stories of this season.
Anytime, and I can't wait to do it again next year.
All right,
can't wait.
Vinny.
And just like the regular season, all good things must come to an end. And again, we thank Vinny Laspinusa for coming and taking us around the year of baseball. So after the break, even though we will not be here during the offseason to talk about it, we will discuss how things might shape out and how things might go down. But first, your final sports update with Zevin Schuster.
Thanks, guys. After winning 7 straight games, the Islanders are back on the ice this Friday when they face the Tampa Bay Lightning. Puck drop is at 7 o'clock at NYCB Live, home of the NASA Veterans Memorial Coliseum. It is winner take all tonight as Game 7 of the World Series is underway in Houston, with the Houston Astros leading the Nationals 1-0 in the top of the 5th inning. Tonight's matchup is the first ever World Series Game 7 matchup between 2 former Cy Young Award winners in World Series history. Zach Greinke gets the ball for Houston, and just 3 days after having excruciating back spasms, Nationals ace Max Scherzer is on the mound for the Nationals in the biggest game of his career. Washington skipper Dave Martinez is confident his ace is healthy and ready to take the hill in the do-or-die showdown.
Yeah, I know for me, and I talked to Max, he feels good. I spoke to him last night and again today, and, it's based on conversations throughout the game, he's going to go as far as he can take us, but he feels good.
Sound courtesy of Fox Sports. Martinez's counterpart AJ Hinch is managing his second career World Series Game 7, and he is well aware that the series decider is unlike any other game in baseball.
It's fun. It's stressful because you want to make the right decision every single time. You want to deploy your best players, the best opportunities you can. But Game 7 is one of the best games in baseball. But
sound courtesy of Fox Sports. To the hardwood, the Knicks fell to 1-4, losing to the Orlando Magic 95-83, led by 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists from Julius Randle, while the Nets trailed the Indiana Pacers by a score of 99-90. Kyrie Irving has 22 points, 6 assists, and 6 rebounds in that one. With your sports update, I'm Zevin Schuster. Now let's step back into the batter's box with Kyle and Tom.
Hi, this is Tyler Norton of Pinstripe Alley, and you're listening to The Batter's Box on 88.7 FM, WRHU.
Stepping back inside the Batter's Box for the final time of the season right here on 88.7 FM WRHU. Tom and I are going to bring on our very own Tony Puglisi for our off-season scouting report, where we're going to talk about free agents and MLB awards. Tony, how you doing?
I don't know.
It's mixed emotions right now.
I'm so conflicted. I get to talk about next year's baseball season. It's exciting, but we gotta wait like half a year after today. It's like it's mixed emotions. It's really a mixed bag tonight. But you know what? I'm happy to be here. I don't care if it's the last show. I mean, I do, but I love it. Let's get right into it, boys. All right, Maddie? Let's talk about reliever of the year first.
All right, interesting choice.
How about that?
I mean, it's been announced already, so.
I mean, I was gonna say it's already been announced. we got our two winners from the American and National League, Aroldis Chapman and Josh Hader. I want to throw it to you boys first. What do you guys think?
Well, I think Aroldis Chapman, just based off of the success of the Yankees, I think he is definitely rightfully deserving of the award. Now, there could have been other contenders in there that a lot of people were mentioning, Liam Hendricks being one of them. And, I mean, just on the day it was announced on Twitter, I saw a lot of people saying, well, I want this guy to win, I want that guy to win. But, I mean, ultimately, Chapman still had a great season, and you must recognize that.
Yeah, despite all the Yankees fans going out after him after that horrible game 6 there, he still had a good season. It really stinks to see how that ended there. So I think we have to give acknowledgement and say, even though he had that one bad pitch there, it was a good season overall for Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more what you guys said about Aroldis Chapman. He saved 37 games in 42 opportunities. That's good for about an 88% save percentage. He's had his lowest ERA since he became the Yankees' full-time closer. And his strikeouts were a bit down this year, but you know what? He also let less men cross the plate. So you know what? It's all about efficiency with Aroldis Chapman, and that's what he displayed throughout the regular season. And Liam Hendricks, I think, could have been a dark horse candidate to win it, if you ask me. Dude had a 1.8 ERA in 75 games as both a stand-up, just a normal reliever, and a closer when Blake Trinan went down. But at the end of the day, Aroldis Chapman, I think, was more of an asset to the Yankees than Liam Hendricks was to the Athletics. So I think that's justified.
And now, how about Josh Hader? Because I have a mixed bag of emotions for this one.
I'm not going to lie, Tom. I saw you pull someone up on Baseball Reference, and I got a thing or two to say about him because I love Josh Hader. I really do. He's a great reliever. 2.62 ERA. Not as good as last year, but still pretty solid. Great stuff.
But
the Padres closer Kirby Yates had a 1.19 ERA in 60 games. This man started his first All-Star game. Good for him. And not just that, he saved 41 games, leading MLB in 43 opportunities. That's 93%. And not just that. I know this is more of an advanced stat, but you know what ERA plus is?
If you can give us a brief explanation of that, that would be great.
Just briefly, it's ERA adjusted for ballparks. Nothing huge. Hader's was 170, which is pretty good. Yates, 358.
Wow.
That, I don't know. I love Hader, but I think Yates should have gotten it if you ask me.
I mean, you just said the stats right there. I'm going to keep this brief. Kirby Yates definitely got snubbed of this NL Rookie of the Year award in my mind.
Yeah, he's got 41 saves, man. And what San Diego was this year, 41 saves is huge for that ball club. I'm just saying. To save 41 games for a team that was really, really not that good is really impressive, especially for a rookie.
Couldn't agree more, fellas. All right, now let's jump into the juicy awards, the ones everybody cares about. We're talking MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year. Let's start in the American League. I want to hear first what you guys think about the AL MVP race, because I think it's a three-man race.
Well, I saw your laptop, and I have to completely agree with you about who that three-man race is. It's clearly Mike Trout, Alex Bregman, and DJ LeMahieu. But I think a lot of people are saying, yeah, it's Mike Trout this, Mike Trout that. He's had a great season, but Alex Bregman's numbers have been very comparable, in some regards, even better than Mike Trout's. I mean, never mind. At any rate, so Alex Bregman had 41 home runs on the year, 112 RBIs, 296 average, that's fine, 423 on base percentage. He just had a fantastic year for a better ball club, ultimately.
I think what's really going to hurt Trout, too, is his injury at the end there. No doubt. I think the games he missed is going to hurt the voting at the end there for him.
I think it could, but when you look at Trout's season, even still, he posted a career high in home runs. He still led he led the American League in on-base percentage. We'll get to who led baseball in on-base percentage soon. And I still think Trout's going to get it, if I'm honest, but I think Alex Bregman could be like a dark horse coming up, like Secretariat. He'll swipe it from him. LeMahieu, I would like to see him win because he had a fantastic year, really stepped up when the Yankees needed him, but I don't know. I think it's going to be harder for him to be the dark horse than, say, Alex Bregman.
Yeah, I think that he's going to need a lot of votes to go the right way for LeMahieu to get the AL MVP.
Yeah. And now, how about the National League, Tony? What you got?
Let's talk about the National League. Again, I think it's down to a three-man race. Make it easier that way.
Yeah.
Now, I got three men right in front of you, boys. I've got Christian Yelich, Cody Bellinger, and Anthony Rendon. easily one of those three are going home with the hardware. Christian Yelich leads baseball in on-base percentage. He leads baseball in slugging and OPS. And overall, he just led the National League in a bunch of other categories like average. He took home a batting title despite being injured for most of September. And overall, he maintained, he not just maintained, he superseded his 2018 campaign. And his 2018 campaign was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I think the only reason he's not a shoo-in for the MVP this year like he was last year is because of his competition, who we'll get to.
And, I mean, if you were to ask me this in May, who would win the NL MVP, I'd have said Cody Bellinger when he was hitting above 400. But now, I mean, just looking at the entire year in general, Christian Yelich has had just such a more consistent year, putting up numbers consistently across the board, night in and night out, when Cody Bellinger was really struggling. Anthony Rendon is another name that we can mention. He's playing in the World Series right now. But ultimately, I think Rendon falls short. He'll probably get third place, I'm going to say. Bellinger 2, I'm putting Yelich at 1.
I'm really sold on Rendon, Tom.
Really?
Yeah. He led the NL in RBIs with 126. He was top 3 in batting average at 319. I think this is good enough numbers to help propel you. Listen, I know it's a little spotty, his numbers, but still, his hot streaks were very high. And even when he was a little struggling there in the mid-seasons, it wasn't awful. I would say so.
I can see what you mean there, Kyle. That momentum going into the postseason is definitely going to help players like Rendon, and it could hinder someone like Bellinger, who was abysmal going into August and September.
Yeah.
Like, still not a bad player, but compared to his April, where he was hitting 400 average,
it was insane.
No. I personally I agree with Tom. I think it's going to be Yelich, Bellinger, and Rendon. But either way, let's shift gears to the Cy Young voting because I want to talk some free agents with you boys.
Oh boy.
All right.
Now, for the American League, again, I've narrowed it down to 2 men this time because just to make it easier, we've got the next Randy Johnson and Garrett Cole.
Yep.
And we've got our own Jesse Lindell's favorite pitcher on earth, Mr. Fine Wine himself, Justin Verlander.
Justin Verlander, baby.
Verlander, let me tell you something about Verlander right there because I just want to hit you with this right away. This man, this season, posted the 5th best whip of all time in a single season.
That's incredible. Wow.
All time. He only trails... Let's see, 3 guys from the dead ball era, albeit one of them's Walter Johnson, and Pedro Martinez in 2000. So
that's impressive.
Verlander was all right this year. You know, pitch another no-hitter. First career 300 strikeout campaign. He's a shoo-in, right?
Not necessarily.
Wrong.
Oh, you're going to tell me? Well, I mean, I'm going to agree with you probably, but...
Yeah.
I mean, you can go.
I didn't call Cole the next Gary Johnson for nothing.
Next Gary Johnson.
Gary.
Did I call him Gary Johnson?
Yeah, you did call him Gary Johnson. That's just disrespectful to Randy Johnson right there.
I'm sorry. Randy Johnson, for some reason you're listening.
We have the studio
I'm sorry.
giving Tony a bunch of thumbs down right now.
Thumbs down. I would give you the thumbs down. He'd give you 2 thumbs down.
I meshed their names. That's what I did.
It's all right.
It's not going to happen no more.
Anyway, how about the stats for Garrett Cole?
So, for Garrett Cole, he poised. You know what? It's funny that I brought up Randy Johnson, not his brother Gary, because Garrett Cole led baseball with 326 strikeouts, and that is the most single-season strikeouts since Randy Johnson did it in 2002. He poised 334, and Cole, on the whole, has been untouchable. Like, I think you boys saw that before he lost in the World Series, he had not recorded a loss since May.
Yeah.
His ERA was in the low 2s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had 20 wins. Like we said, he hasn't lost since May. That was incredible stuff. He's my AL MVP.
I'm going to agree with Kyle, and I'm going to agree with you, too. I believe Garrett Cole's the AL Cy Young just simply because of his enormous great streak that he's had this year.
I'm going to say Verlander could sneak away with it, but it'll be unbelievably close. Honestly, what I would love to see is co-winners, but you know what? That's rare.
That's very rare, and especially on the same team too.
Exactly.
That'd be unheard of.
So anyway, let's go over to the National League, boys, because this one is a lot more cut and dry.
Yeah.
Jacob deGrom, I don't think there's too much debate here. Jacob deGrom posts another great year, 2.43 ERA, not quite as 2018 where he was, below 2. But still, solid year, 255 strikeouts. That led the National League. Most consistent pitcher on the Mets rotation, and one of the most consistent pitchers of the entire league. Honestly, I don't think it's much of a contest. Max Scherzer missed time because of injury. Ryu went on a terrible slump later in the year. And someone like Flaherty and Strasburg, they just got hot too late.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any hot takes here. It's Jacob deGrom, no doubt about it. But you know what, Tony? you wanted to talk about some free agency. Let's move on and talk about free agency. I'm excited.
Let's do this. You know what? I love this so much that I want to present these free agents to you guys today in the form of buy or sell.
Okay.
We're calling it back to call to the bullpen.
All right, let's do it.
So I got my agents right here. I'm not going to show them to you guys. So let's start with the hottest free agents on the market first. Number 1, Garrett Cole to the Angels. Buy or sell?
I'll buy that. I think with the whole new regime there, with Joe Madden, with this whole new thing, and now with Mickey Callaway as pitching coach, I could see it.
As much as I'd love to see him on the Yankees, he's not going to New York, especially after his success in Houston and just the rivalry that they've sparked over the past few seasons that Cole has been there. I'll buy it to the Angels.
I got to agree with you guys. There's no doubt in my mind that Cole's going anywhere else.
Yeah.
Kyle, I want to just pretty much mirror exactly what you said, but I also don't want to waste time. So let's move to the next free agent.
Let's do it.
Anthony Rendon, back to Washington. Buy or sell?
It depends. The contract, is it going to be $300 million?
Let's see. We don't know if he's getting Harper.
If he's getting Harper-esque money.
We know that the Nationals already made him a hefty qualifying offer.
Yeah.
But it also depends on whether or not someone like the Phillies will sneak in. They're a favorite to get a permanent third baseman, or someone like the Rangers who want to fill that hole. But I don't know. I personally am going to buy it. Just for the mindset that I don't know why they would get rid of this guy who led them to the World Series and is a top 3 MVP candidate, just like that.
Yeah.
See, I think he'll be commanding upwards of Nolan Arenado money, which is, I believe, near 300, but didn't eclipse that so far. But just because I can't think of a team that he would go to right now, I'm going to buy that too.
All right. So I'm going to get you guys one more.
Okay.
I'm going to get you guys one more really quick. It's a bit of a hot take, but it's about Zach Wheeler.
Oh, ooh.
Okay.
I see him going to Houston.
Oh.
Buy or sell?
Oh, my God. I don't want to keep buying everything, but you know what? If he really wants to reinvent himself into being a better pitcher,
he's going to
then
go there.
He's going to have to go to Houston. So I'm going to, unfortunately, have to buy that one.
I'm going to sell it. I think he'll go somewhere else. I think he's going to go somewhere where he's going to be the number 1 option. Because if he goes to Houston, he's not going to be that number 1 option.
Honestly, we've seen too many pitchers nowadays, like Greinke, Wade Miley, going to the fountain of youth that is the Houston Astros organization and throwing the best in their career. So I'm going to buy it. They're going to need someone with Cole probably leaving. And honestly, Ken Rosenthal even reported they were pulling their money in him anyway in the trade deadline.
Wow.
Well, that's going to be
that's that.
That's going to be a disappointing day in the offseason once that happens. But at any rate, thank you again to Tony Puglisi for coming on to break down what the offseason is possibly going to look like. And after all that offseason chat, that's going to wrap up the offseason scouting report. And so now we've reached the final minutes of the season on the batter's box. And that means we've got one more segment for you guys in store, and that is our last lick segment where we get to talk about something that we really want to talk about for a few moments. And to help us close out the show, we're going to have all 3 producers come on.
One last time.
And we're going to be joined by Jesse Lindell once more. And guys, I think the way to go, I don't know if you guys have anything prepared, but I think we should just talk about the best moments of the season.
The best moments of our season.
Yeah.
We've had some times here. We've had some times as producers.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But yeah. Jesse?
I think it was probably the trade deadline show because that entire day was very jam-packed.
Yeah.
I think it was a good show. We were in here. And it was a huge emotional roller coaster thinking which team's going to do what. Of course, me having a huge breakdown when the Astros traded for Zach Greinke. I was going around the station and I was in a very, very bad mood. And I wanted somebody to look at me the wrong way and just be like, go off on them. No, I'm kidding. But I would say the trade deadline show is probably one of the big ones.
Yeah, I would say so too. That was a big one. We've had some great guests on the show this season.
Yeah.
We've had Gary Denier, the Thumbs Down guy, big shout out. Eric Hubbs from Barstool, Josie McFly from the Pinstripe Strong podcast. We've had some great guests.
Pete McCarthy, Anthony
DeComo, Eric Bolin.
Yeah, Tim Healy, Ken Davidoff. David Lennon. We've had some
star-studded shows here, and we can't thank all of them enough for coming on and making our show that much better.
Yeah, exactly. And since you already mentioned Gary Denier, I was going to say that because it was me and Jesse on the call for that interview, and I had a lot of fun talking to Gary Denier, aka the thumbs down guy, just talking about his backstory and how he got his nickname and how he's dealt with fame. But I'm going to talk about the birthday edition that I've had over the Batters Box. So for those of you who don't know, I'm from New Jersey, although I mentioned that earlier in the show. Traveling up this whole entire summer just to be here, even if it was for a few hours a week, and having to pay the stupid tolls of the Verrazano Bridge and the Outer Bridge Crossing.
He made it, though.
It was a worthwhile experience. I absolutely loved it. But the one thing I'm going to harp on you guys, though, you wished me a happy birthday that show, and I never got my birthday cake, and I never got to blow out the candles. I'm very disappointed in that stuff.
Well, you know what? We'll go to Carvel after this show, and I will get you a cake in the shape of an ice cream. Would you like that, Tom?
In the shape of an ice cream, really?
I mean,
We're getting
in the shape
ice
of a
cream
baseball.
in shape of ice cream? What are we saying right now?
Oh, that's a great way to end this show.
Yeah.
Like, one of the very last minutes of the show, in the shape of an ice cream. No, what I meant was in the shape of a baseball, but also with ice cream, like ice cream cake is what I meant.
Well, you know what, Jesse? If you do that, I'll get you one in the shape of a paper airplane because at the end of literally every show since the middle of the summer, Jesse's been making paper airplanes and throwing them all around the studio. And he's gotten on my nerves about it a little bit. But
I've gotten on other
it's all
people's
in the love
nerves,
of the
not
game.
involved with this show, but.
But for one last final lick, as we wrap up everything here, I want to do one last final lick. And on October 30th of 2001 was the day that George W. Bush threw out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium in the World Series Game 3. And now it's the anniversary. Isn't that was if you think of one of the most iconic moments in baseball history, I have to think of that.
Yeah.
Despite of everything that happened, of the events that happened the month before, especially in New York, that team that went on that run all the way to the World Series to face off against the Arizona Diamondbacks, that was just an incredible story, something everyone looked to rally around. It was so nice to see. Even the manager of the Diamondbacks at the time said, I didn't even vote for George, but that was something historic and memorable.
It just really reinvigorated New York so well after the tragic 9/11 incident. But I mean, again, it just reinvented the passion that people feel for baseball here in New York, especially. And I mean, I couldn't think of a better moment in New York.
In New York, exactly.
Yeah. And I think it also really reunited everybody, regardless of where they stood politically, in such a tough time. It kind of gave off the message of, we're all still together. Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna get through it. Yeah,
exactly. And we're all still together here in the Batters Box as we're going to wrap up our final show here. And that will do it for our final edition of the Batters Box. We would like to thank you for being a part of your Wednesdays every night during this MLB season. Many things to go around the entire sports department, starting off behind the scenes with Max Sacco pushing all the right buttons. Assisting him was Andrew Murdolo. Setting up with this amazing camera equipment and mixing was John Sinelli. Our sports updates were brought to you by Zevin Schuster and Ryan Ginio. Our experts tonight were Jesse Lindell, Tyler Martineau, and Eddie Gardner. Regular season recap was done by Vinny Laspinusa, and our scouting report was done by Tony Puglisi. Producing the show was Tom Bauer, Jesse Lindell, and myself. For Tom Bauer and myself, we would like to thank you and stay classy.
The views and opinions expressed in the Batters Box are not necessarily those of WRHU, its management, or Hofstra University. Opposing viewpoints will be considered by mailing them to WRHU, Room 127, Lawrence Herbert School of Communications, 111 Hofstra University, Hempstead, New York, 11549. Or you can contact us online at WRHU.org. Thank you for listening to the Batters Box on 88.7 FM Radio Hofstra University.
Proudly broadcasting from the Richard Philip Cavallero Studio.
WRHU.
Hempstead.
You discovered
A cornerstone of the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication.
WRHU.
Tired of hearing the same music over and over? Well, fear no more. You found Airwave, New York's home for indie music, here on 88.7 FM, WRHU.